How's it going, trainers? Back in September, we saw the Weather Cup debut in Pokemon Go as an Ultra League Cup. In just a few days, though, we'll see the Cup return, but for the Great League this time. There's definitely going to be a lot of overlap between these two variants, but today I'm going to discuss some other good options for this 1500 version and some teams to try out, so let's get into it. Welcome back, trainers. So the Great League version of the Weather Cup is nearly here, so it's about time we look at some of the best Pokemon to try out. Though to keep from treading the same ground we did during the Ultra League Weather Cup guide, I'm just going to quickly list the Pokemon we already talked about there. So Blaziken, Cradily, Regirock, Swampert, Lantern, Tapu Fini, Samurott, Kingdra, Abomasnow, Alolan Sandslash, and Regice are all still eligible for this cup, and still good. I will emphasize that Lantern, Abomasnow, and Cradily are all really good here, and a lot more affordable than their Ultra League XL versions. If you'd like to hear more about these Pokemon's performance and their preferred movesets, check out our previous guide for more details. But now, let's move on with some of the other good choices for this cup. Now when it comes to the fire type, we only really saw Blaziken as a truly noteworthy Pokemon for the cup, and I do think that holds true here too. You could use Wing Attack Charizard or Alolan Marowak to some success, but I think they're a bit riskier with Lantern, Swampert, and some other choices being prevalent, so I'd stick with Blaziken if you do want a fire type. Moving on to the rock type though, we've got the infamous Bastiodon, who is an incredible choice as you might expect. Beyond Blaziken, there really aren't many good counter users in this cup, and while there's definitely water types like Swampert and Lantern, that doesn't stop Bastiodon from being an incredibly bulky force to be reckoned with. This cup is also one that lets you run the very infamous team composition of Bastiodon and 2 Razor Leafers, so that's an early team for you. Now another rock type that will be viable is Probopass, another rock steel type who will act as a less bulky but more oppressive force than Bastiodon. It's more focused on its charged moves than fast move pressure, and Rock Slide along with Thunderbolt gives it some solid coverage for this cup, letting it hit ice types nicely, but also having Thunderbolt hit water types. Though Probopass's pitfalls come with the many water types not being weak to electric in this cup, Swampert, Lantern, and Ludicolo specifically. Nonetheless, it can still be used to catch some opponents off guard, so I'd say it's still at least worth mentioning. But on to water types, we've got several choices who enter the meta because they're much more common in the Great League, and really good too. Up first is one of the big beneficiaries of the Wing Attack buff, Pelipper, whose typing and spamminess helps it excel in the open Great League, and this cup is no different. It'll definitely struggle against Lantern along with the bulky Bastiodon, but it'll demand shields from a lot of Pokemon, especially if you build up to a Hurricane, so it's still fantastic. But I do highly recommend pairing it with at least one grass type if you do choose it. Now the next two I'm going to group together because they're pretty similar. Both Araquanid and Toxapex are very bulky water types that primarily do damage of their subtyping, either bug or poison. I generally say Toxapex is the better of the two, with more bulk and the more useful poison jab. However, in this cup, it's far more situational. Both are great because they resist other water moves, but Araquanid specifically does better against Swampert and Whiscash, and Toxapex does better against Pelipper, Blaziken, and Alolan Ninetales. So it does depend on what your opponents are using and what the rest of your team is. Now the last Pokemon I'd like to talk about is an Ice type, and that's Alolan Ninetales. Now this isn't the best Pokemon for this cup, but it is the only strong Charmer here. Charm won't do super effective damage on any major Pokemon, but it is still strong. Besides a few Steel and Poison types, it'll do powerful neutral damage on most of the meta, plus having the cheap Weather Ball really helps it. You can use it with Powder Snow as well, but I honestly think Abomasnow is the better choice if you go that route. But Charm Alolan Ninetales can be an excellent addition to some teams. And speaking of teams, let's go over a few to try out. Up first, we have Lantern, Araquanid, and Abomasnow. Now as you'd expect, Lantern does a lot of the heavy lifting in this cup, with it having a strong hold on most of the meta with its bulk and coverage. But when it does face a grass type or a water ground type like Swampert, you'll have Araquanid and Abomasnow in the back to keep it safe. You'll want to beware of Bastiodon or Blaziken that your opponent may have in the back, as they could doom this team if you don't plan things around your Lantern taking down either of them. Up next, we have Cradily, Swampert, and Pelipper. Now this team is really spammy, but it also has a lot of good coverage. With Cradely's Rock, Swampert's Ground, and Pelipper's Flying move. You'll definitely be able to threaten shields with this team, you'll just want to be wary of opponent Cradily and ice types like Abomasnow. I know I did mention Swampert's ground coverage with Earthquake, but I think this team also works well if you use Sludge Wave on Swampert, as it can definitely take the opponent by surprise and give you more of a fighting chance against Pokemon like Ludicolo and Abomasnow, if you see more of them frequently. And for our last team, we have Alolan Sandslash, Ludicolo, and Kingdra. Now I'm willing to admit that this team may be a little less consistent, as it's one of my more experimental teams, but here's where I think it could work well. All three of these Pokemon have some coverage against Lantern, who I expect to be huge in this cup. Sandslash likely the least so, but it does still have Shadow Claw for strong neutral damage, and Bulldoze for super effective damage. Ludicolo, obviously as a Razor Leafer, does remarkably well against Lantern, and Kingdra can dish out Dragon Breaths while not being too bothered by much other than Lantern's Thunderbolt, which even then isn't that much. But also, this team provides good coverage against other players who I expect to be big, like Swampert, Cradily, and to a slightly lesser extent, Pelipper. There's still many to be concerned about like Blaziken, Charizard, and Bastiodon, but I do think this team has the potential to hit a lot of common Pokemon. But again, this is based on what I expect to be the most prevalent in the meta, which may or may not be the case. But be sure to let me know what team you'll be trying out, whether it's one of ours or something you came up with. I'd love to hear what people are planning to use. And if you found this guide helpful, we'd really appreciate it if you gave the video a like, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our future guides and new Pokemon analyses. That just about wraps up this prep guide though, so until next time, I hope you all ride the high winds during the Weather Cup, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.